ancestrales des peuples Anishinaabe sur les territoires traditionnels des Premières Nations Nipissing, Temagami et Dokis, désignés par le traité Robinson-Huron. Nous honorons leur lien historique avec le territoire et nous valorisons leur contribution considérable au façonnement et au renforcement de nos communautés. Ce faisant, nous réaffirmons notre engagement et notre responsabilité envers la réconciliation et l'amélioration de notre compréhension des peuples autochtones locaux et de leur culture.
Thank you very much. Okay, I don't take any declarations of pecuniary interest. Councillor Cushing.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I will be declaring a conflict of interest for item 5.1.1. Donc, la demande d'aide financière pour l'amélioration du parc communautaire. Et puis la raison, je siège comme administrateur au conseil d'administration du centre communautaire de l'Amérique.
Okay, merci. Et des autres? Okay, none. We do have an addendum for this evening's agenda. So, Madam Clerk.
It is moved by Councillor Tessier and seconded by Councillor Crushing. Be it resolved that the addendum for the meeting of council held on December the 5th, 2023 be adopted as presented.
Okay, questions or comments? All in favor? Carried. And to adopt the agenda, please.
It is moved by Councillor Crushing and seconded by Councillor Tessier. Be it resolved that the agenda for the meeting of council held on December the 5th, 2023 be approved as presented.
Okay, questions or comments? All in favor? Carried. I'll just take a moment to welcome Councillor Restoul and Councillor St. Louis remotely this evening. Please, gentlemen, if I do miss your hand during any point of the discussion, feel free to kind of speak up. Don't let me pass over you accidentally, okay? I'm not used to looking at the screen. So welcome. Glad you could make it even from far away. With that, we don't have any delegations or petitions this evening. We'll move on to 5.1, which is our Committee of the Whole, General Government. The first item on the agenda is a request for financial assistance for the community park in Levin. There is a request by President Dan Corriveau included in your package. The request is for an additional $25,000 to assist with fencing for the playground. And, you know, it was included in their originals, but I think as we've all seen, you know, every project around seems to be experiencing cost overruns from very expensive supplies and such. Did any member of staff want to speak on this request at all?
Thank you, Your Worship. I will pass it on to the Director of Economic Development, Community Services.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. The project is a partnership with the community group in Levin. Council had approved $75,000 towards the playground equipment. The property is a municipal property. And so the CCL and their volunteers decided to get on board and form a partnership to enhance that project. So in addition to playground equipment, they were successful in obtaining funding from the federal government and enhancing the project where they will we'll see the installation of outdoor fitness equipment along with a gazebo that will be there for folks to enjoy. And they also wanted to fence the perimeter of the property at the back of the rink where the playground is. And as the request suggests, they did run out of funds to, and so there's a portion of the property that would not be fenced in. And as a recommendation, it would be nice to be able to finish that project and have the entire perimeter of the property fenced in. The additional cost is being requested of council. And if council does decide to move forward with this request, we do have, speaking to Ms. Craddock, we do have room within our 2023 special project budget that we would be able to provide the funds for this year. So although the project, obviously, because winter's arrived, won't be able to be completed this year, If council does decide to move forward with this, we would accrue the dollars and finish the project in the spring once the ground is thawed.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments? Councillor Gagne?
Yes, I just have a question. Does the reason to fence the whole area, is it for security purpose, or I'm just curious in understanding why everything wants to be or needs to be fenced in?
So initially, yes, that was part and parcel of that. It's near a wooded area. There's neighbors on both sides, so the committee thought it'd be best to fence in the entire back property. And their intention was to exactly do that. So they've done a portion of it, and the fence stops where the money stopped.
Okay.
So then they came to us, and we're bringing this to council.
Well, to add to it as well, I think there is an area that delineates between our property and the old Living School, which is kind of a fuzzy area, and I think it would add some certainty with and not have users trespass and vice versa. So I think it would be a good idea going forward.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Other questions? Councillor Tessier?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The 2023 Special Project Fund, what type of other projects does that include just for?
So those were community projects. We had beautification projects that part and parcel, some of the equipment at like park benches and garbage cans and what we call community beautification and enhancement came out of that. We did some projects in Verner as well. We did a project at the Sturgeon Falls Beach. We did. We also have under our special projects, we have the community events and programs that we generally have for year to year. Kids Safe Halloween, we had free outdoor movie night, and the list goes on. So that generally comes out of that fund.
Thank you.
So that wouldn't impact, sorry, I'll ask a question myself through. That wouldn't impact our 2024 budget deliberations.
Absolutely not.
It's from this year, as we've got a little bit left.
Yep, that's correct, Madam Mayor.
Okay, other questions, comments? Okay, I'll just close by saying, I think we always cite it that To Living is a bit of a shining star in our municipality as far as the way that they're able to engage their volunteers, the events that they put on that really provide a social outlet for not just the people of Living, but Verner, Manettville, and all the people that go to access the programs at the center. And I've always been really impressed with just the spirit that this group does embody. So I just, again, we've said it before, but like to thank the volunteers that sit on the board and work on the programs and put together these great things, because the playground, I don't know if anybody else has had a chance to see it. I saw it when it was near completion, but not quite complete, and it really does look fantastic. It's such a great addition to the community down there. So with that, what we'd look to do is just get a general sense of support for the request, and if council agrees, no. Sorry.
She was speaking to me.
Oh, sorry.
Certainly that, your worship.
That's okay. We get a general sense, and then that would come back as a resolution.
That's right.
Next meeting.
That was
So,
the question she was whispering.
Can I see a show of hands who's in favor to support the project with an additional 25,000? Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is an offer to purchase property behind 88 Riverfront Drive. You'll see a summary sheet for disposition of municipal land included in your packages. It has an overview, and I would pass that to Mr. Barbeau, who will probably subsequently pass it to Madam Planner.
Given, Madam Mayor, that you've said that, I could pass it on to the planner. I would say to you that, that land back in the day, was looked at as a phase second phase of that subdivision from the developer of the day, and that developer is no longer in existence. And so the land is ours, and it has been dormant there, vacant in the back in that center area for quite some time. There is some land more to the east that may be reserved for affordable housing with the affordable housing that exists there. And so that is a potential, but that's the only thing I would add. Perhaps Ms. Ducharme would add.
Through you, Madam Chair, not really, there's not much more to state. The landowner is looking for a small portion of that municipal property to extend his yard, similarly to what was done a few years back, a little bit down the road.
Okay, questions or comments? Councillor Pellerin?
Is this like roughly up to scale, what we're looking at?
I'm not sure.
Does the part that's been wants to be
It's roughly half the size of the lot that he currently owns.
It says 80 feet by 60 feet.
No, it would be 80 by 40, 60 by 40. It's half the size. Sorry, that was a typo. His property is 60 by 80,
Okay,
and it would be half.
okay, so
60 by 40.
Okay, because on
It's an
okay,
area.
it's a typo.
It's a mistake, sorry.
Okay. What's behind there? What's the wooded area?
Through you, it is a wooded area, slightly swampland. It's brush.
Councillor Lamar?
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. I was just looking at that map. I was wondering, because there seemed to be some strategic either entrances or, so I know you mentioned that there was some, someone was thinking as a phase 2 to develop that. So it still would be a possibility if a developer came and approached the municipality, right? So I would just, like, I see another property, I believe it's number 68, already has that extension. So I was just wondering, would this affect it negatively if ever we were to develop that land in the future?
Through you, Your Worship, hypothetically, it's not a contiguous line. But I mean, the design of a future subdivision would take that into consideration.
Councillor Rivard?
And just another question on this matter. I've already walked through that bush and I've noticed quite a few properties kind of have taken some land in that bush area. So this is nice that somebody actually wants to, I guess, own that property that they're taking advantage of. Right. Oh, but at the same time, I was wondering, are we going to perhaps look into those others that have kind of encroached and see if there's a will for them to purchase as well? So that we have a level playing field.
We can certainly have a look through our bylaw enforcement officer, maybe to take a walk with you and have a look at that. No, I'm just kidding. We'll have a look at that, yeah.
Other questions? Yeah, okay. I thought I saw Roxanne. Councillor St. Louis?
Ross.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, and Mr. Rivard kind of stole my thunder of what I was about to say. I did walk around also over that area, and I've noticed that some places have developed in the back. However, at least this individual did reach out to me and asked me several months ago on the process on what to do and how to move forward about purchasing it. I mean, if we're only going to wait with the hypothetical that some developer might come, then, right now we're looking at selling some of our assets to provide funds to our municipality. So I think for us just to wait on the what if, it's, so I think it's just move forward and get it done.
Thank you. Anything else? Councillor Pellerin?
Yes. Yeah, it wouldn't interfere even if it was subdivided later on. It wouldn't interfere with putting in another street.
Okay, so I'll ask just a couple of questions of you, So the blank spot that we see on the east side between 427 and 431 was meant to be a road allowance in case there was future development. That's
That's correct.
and the same with the southerly portion between 550, need glasses, 1 or 557, the little one at the bottom.
Yes, that is
That was
also.
also set aside as a road
And through
allowance.
Madam Mayor, you can't see it on here, but there are also two, there's two of the lots fronting on Riverfront, which are owned by the municipality,
Okay,
which they have roll numbers attached to them, so
okay.
they're not road allowances, but there is access to the back from there as well.
Okay, thank you. And, anybody who sits with me on planning will know that I tend to like straight lines. It makes me happy. But I agree with what's been said here. It doesn't really impact the future ability to develop that property, and a bird in the hand is better than two in the mouth. So I don't have an issue with this proposal. Anybody else before I close the discussion? Okay, I'll just take a general consensus on whether we'd like to prepare, you just need direction in order to get
Start
the
the
appraisal
process.
and start the process?
Yes,
And then it wouldn't come back until that's done, and that would be for a final decision by council?
that's correct.
Okay, so if everybody's okay, we'll give Mel direction to move forward with that. Quick show of hands. Thank you. Okay. Next item on the agenda is proposed renaming of a portion of Maurice Road, Sturgeon Falls. Again, there is a memo prepared by Madam Clerk / Planner, and the information is there. Mr. Preble?
I believe the memo is self-explanatory if there are any questions.
What's the process? Could you go through the process in regards to engaging with the residents on that street? So, do the people who live there already, they're probably aware of the confusion. And so, has there been communication already between the residents, or what does that look like from the municipality side? Just how, if we decide to move forward with this, how will people be notified, and what will the process be?
Typically, what we would do is we would send out a letter to all of the affected residents advising that this is what is being proposed and requesting feedback from the residents. And based on that feedback, if it's positive, we would go forward and prepare the bylaw to do the name change in the event that there was concerns or by residents, would come back to this table with those concerns for consideration.
Do you know how Canada Post addresses those issues? What if, is there a process by which for 6 months they figure it out? I'm worried about people not getting their stuff and changing addresses.
In the past, we have notified Canada Post ourselves, and with it being the municipality's initiative, they're not made to pay for an address change. The municipality
Covers.
it's covered. Well, there's no cost. They just do it. And and the mail is redirected.
Yeah, I would just point out that upon amalgamation or shortly after I arrived, there was a major undertaking looking at all the roads because, as you can imagine, there were a lot of duplicate name roads. And so there were many changes that were made for 911 purposes. And I think this is another example that was just missed.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, so again, I'll just take a quick show of hands if they're agreeable to Madam Clerk forwarding the process along. Question or to vote? Okay, quick show of hands, please. Okay, there you go. Thank you very much. Okay, next item on the agenda is MPAC role-based assessment growth. I did not print out the 220 pages of documentation, but I did take a quick look. And I will.
Oh, with MPAC, I will be forwarding this on to Mr. Pat.
Okay. Good.
Yeah, so it is a lot. So there was a question during our budget about how much our assessment growth had actually happened in 2023. And coincidentally, shortly after that, MPAC always sort of closes they closes their books the end of October for all the changes that occur in year, and then they produce our sort of new starting point. And so this is actually what they've summarized then. So we're on page 206 of their package and 220 of our package. Originally, I was going to put just our assessment in, but I thought it is actually interesting with the, if you've taken a look through and looked at some of our neighbors, looked at the growth across the province. So you'll see where our growth is on that as far as assessment. So like I said, a little bit of growth in the commercial. They did some the interesting things with how farm tax rolled in 2022. So that's a little bit why we have some of that exempt growth and the change of managed forests and things like that. So they actually went through and changed what the rules on farm assessment were, so that they're actually recognizing the exempt portion of the farm property and changed what that exempt portion limit can be. So that's why we see some of that exempt growth in that. But otherwise, like I said, you can see substantially that our assessment sits in the residential. The multi-res by percent is a large, it actually is a fairly significant dollar figure as well. So you can see that primarily that's where our growth has sat for 2020, during the 2023 year. We are still based on, everyone else is still based on 2016 numbers. This is just that new assessment that has come in during the period.
Okay. Questions or comments on that? Councilor Gagne.
Yes, true, Madam Mayor. Why is there a big difference with the landfill?
It's actually that a number of the landfills were had still been flagged as provincial, and they still were flagged as PILs when they actually were ours, and so we just got some of that corrected.
Oh, okay. Thank you. No question, Madam Mayor.
Okay.
Councilor Tessier.
Thank you. The new multi-residential, is that like your block apartments or flex?
Yeah, so multi-res is 7 units and up. So yeah.
Okay. Anybody else have questions on that? Okay, so again, that's the growth based on the 2016 numbers. So when the new assessments are finally put out, there should be a significant change in that according to actual property values. Okay. So there's no decision point on this. This was just being provided as information based on, I believe it was Councillor Pellerin had asked for that, and it's good information to be provided to us so we can understand a little bit where we're sitting. Does that answer the questions that you had during our budget meetings, Councillor Pellerin? Okay, perfect. Thank you very much for putting that together for us, Ms. Craddock. Okay, appreciate that. And the next item on the agenda, 5.1.5, it was part of the addendum that you were provided with, and offered to purchase abutting municipal lands adjacent to 87 Tamarack.
Madam Chair, and I apologize, this was something that I forgot to put into the actual agenda, but it was put in as an addendum. The request here is similar to the one that was brought forward. The landowners next to this municipally owned property are requesting to purchase a portion of that. The property is kind of a big L-shaped, and it consists of probably 75% rock. There's this one small portion that is to their property that they have been maintaining, keeping nice for the last few years, and would like to purchase it from the municipality.
Questions or comments? Was that property initially set aside as a parkland dedication for that subdivision?
It was.
Okay. And it's not really developable or
No, through you, it was kind of I was here when that happened. It was kind of a concession as opposed to putting the percentage of money down. To be developer friendly, they provided land that really wasn't developable. And so that was part of their donation to satisfy the request, but
And would that be of a size that would be suitable for a separate lot if somebody wanted to purchase that as a standalone lot? Or would the geography of it make it too difficult to really build it?
it would be,
It would be.
there's rock.
Yeah, and there's a very large municipal drain running through the back of it as well.
Oh, is that what?
Yeah,
That's what that is, yeah.
Other questions or comments on that, the request here? Okay, if not, I'll just say, take quick direction for Madam Clerk to proceed with the appraisal on the property and bring that back for council for decision when she's ready. Show of hands, please. Great, thank you very much. Very quick work of general government, thank you. With that, we'll move on to 5.2, which is our planning committee. And for that, I will pass it to our chair, Councillor Titsey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the short-term rental accommodation, there was a consultation done and a report has been established. The proposed bylaw was posted for public review along with an online survey, which highlighted 7 of its proposed regulations. For each point, participants were asked to indicate whether they agree or disagree. They also had the option to provide further comments or to skip any questions. And a total of 57 online respondents provided answers and feedback. And in our package, for each question, there's a diagram as to who agreed, disagreed, and were unsure. And those were the online surveys results. And the in-person results, what was heard. So for the first question, in person, respondents agreed that a licensing system for regulation of short-term rental accommodation should be required. And from the survey, the majority agreed with that as well. And staff's recommendation is that council adopt a bylaw to require all short-term rental accommodation to be licensed by the municipality of West Nipissing. The second question, many had concerns about the proposed cap on numbers of persons permitted in, I'll just say the acronym, the STRA. Staff is recommending that the number of occupants be set at the time of licensing based on number of bedrooms and septic system capabilities for the individual STRA, and as demonstrated by documentation, septic approval provided by the applicant and inspections carried out by the municipality. Many existing STRA owners were concerned about proposed zoning restrictions on non-principal dwelling STRAs. And staff is recommending that all existing non-principal dwelling STRAs be grandfathered, provided that evidence that the property was being used as a non-principal STRA prior to October 31st, 2023. Existing STRAs will still be subject to licensing requirements. Concerns were raised that the proposed demerit point system could be used as a tool by neighbors in dispute. Staff is proposing that language be included to provide that complaints which are determined to be frivolous or vexatious, as determined by bylaw. The bylaw officer will not result in any negative impact to the STRA owner. Another concerns about the restriction of non-principal dwelling STRAs in the residential zones, in particular the shoreline residential zone, as the SR zone is the most sought after for vacationers. There are limited existing waterfront commercial rental opportunities in West Nipissing, and that such a restriction must have a negative impact on the economy. In West Nipissing, there are approximately 1,700 properties within the shoreline zone, which is SR zone, representing nearly 18% of all properties in the municipality. Staff is proposing that a limited number of non-principal dwelling straw licenses, example, not more than 5%, be made available for the shoreline zones. Note that properties in the shoreline zone which are located in or in proximity within 500 meters to provincially significant wetlands in floodplains or on lakes which have been determined to be at capacity, such as Deer Lake and Cache Lake, etc., would not be permitted to be used as non-principal dwelling straws. Concerns that the bylaw will be so restrictive, expensive as to create an underground economy, recommended that fees be set commensurate with cost recovery. And then everyone in attendance agreed that environmental protection is a concern and that proposed regulation concerning septic system inspection requirements remain. Concerns were raised as to the time that property owners would have to become compliant, and recommended that if the straws bylaw is adopted, that a grace period of 4 to 6 months be given to permit properties owners to obtain the required compliance documentation, example, septic, building, and fire inspections. Also, there's the fees were not provided in the previous documentation, but there is fees that are provided in the document. Initial license, all classes, $800 includes initial building inspection. Renewal of license, $300. Additional building inspection, $250, and appeal fee is $400. So I'll open up to the floor if there's any questions or concerns.
Can you just,
Yes.
through you, Madam Chair, for the appeal fee, that is if a decision is made on a revocation or an issuance of a fine, like, or that's the decision on the licensing?
Either, a person, through you, Madam Chair, if a person is denied a license or their license is revoked through the demerit point system, they can appeal.
And, sorry, I'll have another question, Madam Chair. With the final draft of the bylaw, will there also be an area for set fines for infractions as identified? So, like, is there going to be, is the enforcement of any issues such as noise bylaws or overcapacity will be identified within the STRA bylaw and the fine structure identified within that bylaw? Or would it be an existing, like an existing noise?
Through you, Madam Chair, this bylaw isn't structured with a fine system. This bylaw is structured with a demerit point system where if they infractions would result in demerit points and subsequent revocation of the license.
Okay.
Of course, all other noise bylaws, and parking bylaws, and every other thing that we have, those bylaws, and it would be dealt with and enforced on their own basis.
Okay.
Yes, Councillor Gagné.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question in regards to the timeline that we're giving these strat owners the opportunity to kind of obtain the required compliance and documentation for septic, building, and fire inspection and so on. Because we are saying if we do pass this bylaw, that things will be into effect between 4 to 6 months. So there is still a freezing period that is coming, then there's a thawing period, and then you can actually start digging in the ground. So can we actually look at a grace period, at least that we know that they advance with the process, or ask an extension to be able to do that?
Through you, Madam Chair, first of all, if council is okay with the recommendations being made, there is a zoning bylaw amendment that is required to be undertaken. And the licensing bylaw, the license applications and whatnot will have to be formulated. So there will be a little bit of a time period. once those things are in place, we would then bring the final bylaw, the adopted zoning bylaw, back to council for adoption. And thereafter, at that point, the clock on the grace period, whatever council wishes, whether it's 4 months, 6 months, would begin. And we would probably commence a fairly aggressive social media and letting people know, that this is what's going on and you have this long to get in and get your paperwork in order, so.
Okay. And
Answer the question?
yeah, no, I imagine that the timeline you've given should be sufficient for the homeowners to get their stuff done in that period of time.
I'm not sure how long it takes to get a septic inspection. There might be someone here who could give us that information.
Well, they wouldn't be, through you, Madam Chair, they wouldn't be doing inspections just on a system that's already there. It's a new system, new permit, that's only when the thaw.
I think what you probably want to amend through you is to show proof of emptying your system.
Or that the system was built in the bylaw, that it was built with an approval in the first place.
Yeah, that's a permit search though, as opposed to maybe an inspection.
Okay, I
So,
think that language
yeah,
could be amended.
So I think that's a permit search through the North Bay Mattawa Conservation Authority, and that usually identifies the year that the system was installed, the make and model, for lack of a better word. I'm sure that's not the correct terminology, and what the rated capacity is of it. So I think some of the concerns are like, especially when you get into some of the unorganized areas of the municipality, where the septic system was installed when it was a 2-bedroom cottage and then it was still unincorporated and somebody added a bedroom here and a bedroom there, that, you could have a 4-bedroom structure that's operating on a septic system that was, installed in 1978 and meant for, an 800 square foot cottage. So but I think that the information on the permits relates back to what the actual capacity of the septic system is.
That is correct. And through you, Madam Chair, the intention is to ensure that no one is renting out a property for more people than what the sanitary system was designed.
Any other questions or comments? Yes, Councillor
St. Louis.
St. Louis. Thank you.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. So from what I understand, there's no set fines for any infractions that they do. We're gonna go on a point system or whichever, how you mentioned it. What's the time frame though? So are we going on a point system per year, or is this going to be an ongoing thing? Do we, if it's up, and how often, like, what's the numbers? Are they, 5 infractions and we take their license? Is it 2? Is it 10? Or is it 2 in a year? So on and so forth.
Through you, Madam Chair, the number is 3 infractions, and the licenses are annual. So by implication, you would be 3 in a year would be the numbers. They wouldn't be cumulative because they would be renewing their license every year.
Okay, thank you.
May I
Madam
follow
Mayor.
up on that question through you, Madam Chair? Will the demerits be, it will be one demerit point for everything, no matter what it is? Or will there be infractions that are more serious, whether it's over occupancy or?
Through you, Madam Chair, there is a Schedule A on the bylaw, and at this point in time, all of them are the same at one point. If council wishes to change that and designate some things as more egregious than others, that's certainly within council's purview. Or to change the demerit point system entirely and make it 5 or whatever. This was just something that other municipalities had adopted, but it's certainly subject to whatever this council wishes.
Any more questions, Mr. Pellerin?
I'm just wondering, like, tonight, are we tackling the bylaw itself, like, putting our thoughts in it, or is it gonna be later on that we're gonna do this?
Through you, Madam Chair, the draft bylaw was brought to council. What is being discussed here tonight are proposed changes to that bylaw based on the memo. But the bylaw will come back to council with those changes incorporated if council is agreeable, for sure.
Okay, yeah, there's one thing that, a few things I'd like to see, like, to me, a resident who has Airbnb should be a resident for West Nipissing. That's my thoughts. And you should be allowed, that's my thoughts, should be allowed, maybe one, like your cottage, to make, help pay taxes and stuff like this. Because j'ai vu un programme que une compagnie d'Andouar, ils achètent un paquet de maisons juste pour faire ça. Puis ça, c'est juste pas correct, là. That's what I'm scared of here. Is that in the...
Through you, Madam Chair, no, currently the bylaw doesn't indicate that a person must be an owner. It does indicate that if you are not resident here, that you must have someone within so many kilometers of the building as caretaker. So that, you know, and if there's a problem, there's somebody to contact.
Is there a number that's fixed that a person can have?
No.
To me, that would be a problem.
Other municipalities that I have seen in addressing that question have limited it to one per person, so per name, to try to discourage the acquisition of residential properties to be used in a commercial fashion, you know, for solely profit. And I have seen that done in others so that you're not getting the kind of that, you know, it's one thing to use an STRA to help with a mortgage or a cottage or that type of thing, but I have seen it done where they have limited it to only one active listing per name. So, you know, Joe Smith, he has one here. You can't, sorry, I'm trying to, one license per person.
Certainly, if that is the will of this council,
And so that
should
is
certainly
one.
be included.
I don't know, I'm not chairing.
So that, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I think that the question was, do the members of council want to see a provision such as Councillor Pellerin had suggested incorporated?
So you want to see if we're all in agreement with that recommendation? Show of hands for the number of license per person?
Yeah.
Just limit to one?
Quick question. Yeah, okay, so before,
Oh, sorry.
Oh,
Councillor
Sorry.
Stanley?
just a quick question, before we decide on if we agree with what Councillor Pellerin was saying, are we agreeing to just one? Are we agreeing that we need a set number? Are we talking 2 or 10? What are we agreeing on before I vote, right?
So Councillor Perrin, I believe, said that is it per owner, one license? So if he owns 3 properties, he's only going to get one license for one property? Is that what I'm understanding?
I believe that's what Councillor Pellerin said.
But sorry, again, are we talking about individuals that live from outside of town though, right? Because we might have developers locally that will own more than one. So, you know, again, just before I vote, I want to make sure that I'm voting on the right thing.
And would that be, sorry, would that also be something that is grandfathered, so existing?
Through Madam Chair, the intent, my recommendation would be that existing owners would be allowed to continue.
Mhm. Did you hear that, Councillor St. Louis?
Yeah, and that's the thing. I don't dispute with Mr. Pell saying in the sense that somebody from out of town decides to buy, 10 places. However, if somebody from out of town wants to buy 2 or 3, why would we stop individuals from out of town to try to develop or bring income to our municipality, right? I do 100% understand what he's saying if, somebody's trying to take over everything, but I think we just need to set a number, and I don't think 1 is the number. That's just my opinion.
Looking at a specific number.
Oh, Councillor Restul.
Yes, Councillor Restul.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, just another thought maybe to consider. I know with our old taxi bylaw that we had a limited number of licenses that were available. And I'm thinking if that might be an option to look at a total number of licenses per year. And I'm a little bit, a little bit worried about this. And I say that from the perspective of that we're already in a housing crisis across the province. And if and kind of along the lines of Councillor Pellerin's thoughts, if there are individuals, from out of town or even within the community, and a number of limited houses or residences are getting bought up for the purposes of, going through with this short-term program, I think it's going to put an even bigger strain on community members. And one of the other items we're going to be talking about, and we've heard about often within the last couple of months, is the whole homeless situation. And if we're potentially taking a lot of dwellings off the market to put into these short-term rental pieces, if we're looking strategically and we want a community wellness plan, does this fit within that? If we're allowing this to get too broad? I'm not against entrepreneurship and making money on stuff, but balancing what our vision is for the community and what a number of community members would like to see as well. So just wondering if that might be an option too, just to kind of keep a handle on this and not let it spread like a wildfire if we pass it with no limitations on it. And I'm not saying it will happen, but the potential is there. And then once, if it does happen, once that's out of the bottle, how do you put the cap back on with all of these licenses out there?
Just to follow up on Councillor Restul's thoughts there, I too am in favor of having a limited number of licenses available, and I think it does a couple of things. First of all, it encourages people to actually come and obtain.
Through Madam Chair, that provision is already in the bylaw.
Okay.
I kept thinking it was.
Yeah.
Yes, so right now, the bylaw is structured that the principal dwelling is limited to 1. The principal dwelling in the, that's the part of your house is limited to 1. The entire dwelling, principal dwelling is limited to 1. And the non-principal dwelling is limited to 3. As the bylaw is currently written. So if you buy it just for the purpose of rental, you can't have more than 3 the way it's written now.
Would you like to see?
Subject to discussion.
Yeah, that number is set. So, sorry, we're talking about 2 different pieces of the bylaw at the same time, one which is a limitation of the number of licenses issued, and one is the limitation of the number of licenses to an individual. So I'm not chairing, I'm trying to.
Sorry, Councillor Pellet.
So what you're saying, that the number of licenses, the 3, would that be on the same property or 3 different properties?
That would be 3 different properties. So one, if I wanted to buy 3 properties, I could only buy 3, I can't buy 4.
for the specific purpose of renting it out.
If we're-
That I do not agree on. To me, one, because especially on all the lakes here, like Lake Nipissing, it's all, there's no more room. And there's money to be made, and we all know that through our Airbnb. So again, the program that I watch, people from outside, hey, buy on the lake and there's money to be made and we're losing space for our resident. To me, in my mind, that's the way I look at it.
Not to enter into the debate, but I just want to paint a scenario on 3 as well, as if it's just 3, you can have somebody on a very small lake buy 3 in a row, and one of the concerns of Airbnbs or VRBOs or whatever you call them, short-term rentals, is the impact it has on local residents as well. So if you have 3 in a row, that's almost a commercial, in my opinion, that's almost a commercial enterprise when you do 3 in a row. And so just pointing that out is if it was 3 in different areas, that'd be fine. But if you had 3 in a row, that could be a real detriment to local owners. Just letting you know that.
Councillor Pellegrini?
That was my thought exactly. If we don't agree to 1, if it goes to 3, even if they're not all together, if you have 3, it's a business. It's commercial. You're competing against commercial enterprise. Yeah. That's my thoughts.
So what I'm hearing is council would like to see all of the classes limited to 1 per individual? Is that what I'm hearing?
Now, the current, there's some properties that are gonna be grandfathered in right now, right?
The suggestion is that the existing operators not be penalized by the,
So this is for new,
correct?
okay.
Well, it's up to, council can
Yes.
decide not to grandfather, that's entirely within their choice as well.
Yeah, well, right now. That's the question, so. Are we keeping the grandfathering and then considering new purchases or new licenses that are not existent? Yeah. Councillor Pellegrini?
Usually, I've been planning for a few years, and usually, Mel, correct me if I'm wrong, it's most likely grandfathered. Yeah.
Yeah, that's typically the way it goes in zoning, yes.
Having said that, through you, is grandfathering making those existing users exempt from all conditions?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
No, their location or number of would be okay, but their requirements for licensing and inspections, no. Same.
So then
Sorry, Councillor.
I just had a few quick comments. I had the opportunity to speak to some of the residents in my area that had approached me over the last months with some of their concerns, and I'm glad to see that some of them either participated or that some of the recommendations stem out from the consultation that was held. So one of the things that came frequently is just clarifying the definition, I guess, of being grandfathered in, because I won't name the people, but the southern section of my ward 8, there are individuals that own 2 houses on the same property, but that they rent it out. Yes, they're residents, let's say from North Bay, but if that wouldn't be grandfathered in, they would actually, let's say, like altogether lose the houses because they have mortgages on those properties. So I kind of get both ends, but we don't want to, I guess, go too far on the other end too, because some of them are bringing in some dollars into the economy. So I get that, once they've wound up or once they've sold the property, that the other owner can't kind of use it. And, if that's what I'm understanding, for example, it's an existing non-conforming use right now.
Which typically runs with the property, not the owner.
Okay, so it'd be the property.
Typically.
So that, but I guess, again, through the report, I was able to get more information on that. So that was just one of the comments. Also too, with what Councillor Gagne had mentioned, is 4 or 6 months enough to give them time to comply? I would be tending, because this is, hopefully we're not going to be rewriting this bylaw every year. But let's say if we put in a year grace period now, is it too much time? Because again, ground conditions are different in Sturgeon than they are, let's say, in Loudon Township than, Crare, let's say. So
We could probably address the specific time limits when it comes back, because at this point, we don't
Okay.
know whether it would come back in January, which changes the timeline till when it's good weather, or if it comes back in March, or, by the time all the bits and pieces are put together. So I think that that we could probably address a specific timeline for compliance when we know where the starting point is, right?
That's correct.
When the bylaw passes. So that would be a simple amendment, or in,
Well, and that wouldn't be in the bylaw, that would be something that would be part of the communication, where we wouldn't enforce until that time had been.
okay. Okay, so we still need to know whether you want just one, right?
And I had one more question after that.
Yes.
Councillor Gagne?
Yeah, just to add to Conseiller Courchain, I think maybe not extending, requesting an extension for that period of time that we map out. So if we say 4 to 6, but for some reason you can't find a contractor to do it, but you can at least show you went through the proper channel to move it forward, then maybe they can request an extension for a period of time. I think that would be better than just trying to say, well, give you a year's grace and so on. So we do have a cutoff date, and it's within the owner to ask for an extension, like I think a building permit, that's the way it works too. So thank you very much.
Councillor Gagne, Pellerin?
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, my thoughts on this is, it's always in mind of the neighbor. I heard some pretty good stories, and I wouldn't want to be that neighbor. We've got 3 of them around my place. We never had an issue, but it just take the one weekend or the 1 week to screw up. You know what I mean? So that's why I'm not against it completely, but I'm not open to, okay, there's money to be made, bringing the people from down south, and no, not on the back of the neighbors. That's my thoughts.
Okay. Can I help just
Yeah,
help
go
you
ahead.
along here?
Thank you.
Okay, so we had a proposal on the floor from Councillor Pellerin to limit the number of licenses to 1 per name across the board. You had 1, 1, and 3. We had additional comments on that subject by Councillor St. Louis, but that is still kind of an open question that we need to define for Madam Clerk. Please tell me that this question is about limiting to 1 person, because I'm just trying to track the
Through
discussion.
you, Madam Chair, I guess, just what I wanted to point out was I believe it was 1 primary residence, 1 non-primary residence. So the owner
Yes.
would still be allowed to have 2, but it would be 1 primary, 1 non-primary if I'm.
That is correct.
So then they'd still at least be able to have 2 if they are a primary resident, and someone who's not a primary resident would be limited to just 1. Kind of similar to what Conseiller Pellerin is saying about someone from out of town wouldn't be able to just buy a bunch of them. But I still think, kind of on Councillor St. Louis' idea, I don't know, I think it should probably be 2 or 3 for the non-primary resident. Just because, as Councillor Courchain mentioned, there is some money that comes in from this as well, but we don't want it to overwhelm our community either, so.
Well, and the point on this as well is that so if there are existing operators, current operators that have, say 3, they would be allowed to have 3 licenses issued for the 3 properties that they're already currently operating, as long as they meet the other, the septic, the building and all that kind of stuff. So it wouldn't penalize anybody who's already in the market for that. But it would limit licenses in the future.
Through you, Madam Chair, as Mr. Barbo had indicated, perhaps we, as a concession, is that you would not be able to have more than one in the same geographic area. And would address the strip
Yeah,
development.
through you, Madam Chair, like my idea was kind of if a primary resident can have one primary resident Airbnb, short-term rental and a non-primary. Maybe someone who has no primary can at least have 2, similar to someone who lives here, so you'd have 1 and 1, or just 2 non-primary. Not too sure if everyone could have
The
2.
profits for non-primary residents don't stay here, right?
Yeah, no, but there is some money that still comes into the community. Hey, that's kind of what I'm thinking there.
Right. I think the reason that you're looking at this bylaw is to look at the needs of your local residents, and that we are all elected by your local residents. And I know we have an economic development bent, and we want to attract things, but I think that we should be looking at some of the concerns of local residents when you're addressing these issues. The other issue that would satisfy what you're suggesting is that it is grandfathered. So those who have to, if you have a concern with the people who are speaking with you, that is addressed. But the issue that you want to be mindful of is having a proliferation of rental properties that are A, hard to control, B, there are very small lakes that we have here, and there's a lot of impact on a variety of different things, including the environment, fishing, overfishing, and there's a variety of different things that you want to be mindful of, not just investment.
Yes. And Rock's after me, he's waving his hand. I'll just speak to that a little. You know, one of the things that I've always thought in regards to regulating the short-term residential is, you know, when people operate short-term residential accommodations, they're doing so in residential neighborhoods. These are the places where people live, and you're allowing commercial activity in our residential neighborhoods, and there is an impact on that, and there is an incompatibility that does exist within those 2 uses. You know, somebody's on holiday, who is on holiday has a very different type of conduct than somebody who's just living their everyday life and trying to get their kids to bed in time to go to school the next day, and all those types of things. And so there is an impact, and again, Mr. Barbeau mentioned, you know, if you have 3, that's also, it is a commercial operation at that point. If you have 2 or 3 in a row, and if you want to run a commercial operation, then go through the process and change it to a commercial zoning and pay your fair share of commercial taxes. You know, like the operators who have, you know, campgrounds have to meet far more stringent environmental regulations and all kinds of rules and regulations, and pay a higher taxes on the property. And so it really is a kind of incompatibility. So like, I understand wanting to, you know, promote the tourism up here and have visitors come in, but to me, not at the expense of the peaceful enjoyment of people's homes.
Councillor St-Louis?
Thank you. I don't want to beat this to death. And I mean, again, like I said earlier, I disagree with what Valerian was saying. My thought process was 1 and 2. However, the reason I'm bringing it up is, so if I'm a resident of West Nipissing, and I know we're talking about grandfathering things in, right? So if I'm a resident of West Nipissing and I have my home and I own a cottage, however, next year, my work takes me somewhere else, I was French staff. So it takes me somewhere else. So are we going to force the people to sell one of their home now that it's no longer primary?
Through you, Madam Chair, no, that would, if they're still owning the property, it could continue as whatever it was. The license wouldn't, they wouldn't be denied a license because they didn't live in that house anymore. Because somebody's gonna live in that house.
No, no, yeah, no, and I understand that, but then that means I'm living out of town and now I own 2 dwelling in West Nipissing, right? So that's why I'm just saying that if it's 2, to me, that's, better than 1 and 1, but that's all.
Just on that, to try and create a bylaw that hits every scenario could be difficult, but there's also perhaps the opportunity for specific cases to apply for exemptions. We don't like that. Good paper makes good partners, but if there's situations such as that, then we would basically amend the bylaw. If it starts to become an exception and it starts to become a logical exception, then we look at amending the bylaw. But at this point, the question on the floor, Madam Chair, would be, is it appropriate to limit it to, for a local person, 1 plus their cottage or their recreational residence, and only 1 for non-residents? And then I would basically see if you have a majority on that. Otherwise, we can spin forever.
Madam Chair.
No, I'm looking at Madam Chair.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna say, is everybody in favor of what Mr. Barber just said? Keep it
Well, it would
this,
have to be one or the other. right?
one or the other? Well, there's
No,
a
it's 1 and
resident.
1 for locals and 1 only for a
Yeah.
non-residents.
So then who's in favor of that?
2, 3, 4. Sorry, 5.
Sorry, I have a question on top of the question. Is this taking into consideration the grandfathering part of it or just that specific?
That's new, that would be
That's
new
the-
license.
Okay,
Just new.
thank you.
So grandfathers are
Grandfathers,
fine.
grandfathers.
So all in favor of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6?
Okay.
Okay.
And then the second item we had that was on the floor that was being discussed was Councillor Restoul's comment about limiting the total number of licenses available, which I think, is that in the bylaw or that was identified in the consultation?
Through you, Madam Chair, I was looking, in the initial iteration of the bylaw, there was no short-term rentals allowed in the shoreline residential zone. I was looking for a direction on a potential limited number in the shoreline residential zone, but if council wants to limit the number in every zone to a certain, that's certainly, lots of municipalities have done that.
Okay, so Councillor Restoul opened us up. Madam Chair, may I speak?
Yes.
Okay, through you, Madam Chair. One of the reasons I like the idea of limiting the number of licenses is it encourages compliance. So if there is a limited number of licenses available and we're trying to encourage the people who are existing operators to come forward and get their license by limiting the number that are available, it encourages them to sign up. Second of all, when you look at enforcement of, we'll say, bad operators, if we have an operator that, after the set number of licenses is issued, there would be a waiting list. And so if somebody's license were to be revoked because of non-compliance or, repeated non-compliance, they end up going on the bottom of the waiting list before they could apply for another license again, and they might even do a year or whatever. But it kind of encourages people, get them while they're hot. And try to encourage initial registration. And it also allows us to kind of look at how the bylaw is running within a limited scope. So it doesn't go kind of wild and crazy the first year. I know that the municipality of French River limited the number of licenses available there when they adopted their bylaw not too long ago. And I like the idea of that as well.
Any comments or questions with that? Yes, Councillor Restoul?
Through you, Madam Chair, just a question, and if we have this info, if I overlooked it, I apologize, but do we know how many of these are operating within the municipality at the current time?
Through you, Madam Chair, the number fluctuates and it's hard to gauge because multiple operators operate on multiple platforms. We also have our licensed commercial operators who use those platforms as booking agents too, so it is difficult to kind of gauge, but my best guess would be somewhere in the neighborhood of about 120.
Okay, because I'm just, I'm curious in this situation with the grandfathering clause, and I know it's tough to just start with a whole clean slate, but what snapshot in time do we have for those who are going to be grandfathered? And I'm being real, real picky here, but if we have this discussion this evening and it's a public meeting and this is coming down the pipe for people, what's going to stop 300 people from putting up their stuff tomorrow? And then there were 400 grandfathering.
Through you, Madam Chair, I had addressed that in my report because I had that thought, and my thought was that they would need to be able to demonstrate that they were in action on October 31st of 2023.
Okay, and just one final question or comment, if I may, through you, Madam Chair. Is there a mechanism that we can use, and I'm assuming we can do whatever we like in terms of developing a bylaw, but if we have a grandfathering clause or grandfather clause, can we limit that to the current owners right now? Because I have a little bit of worry that this grandfathering clause is going to go on in perpetuity, right? And it'll never end for those people who are there now. I guess I'm not opposed to the thought of a grandfathering clause, but can there be a limit to it? Because I think someone around the table mentioned if someone sells their property, then it just gets taken over by the new buyer and it stays in the same situation. And one last question on that note too, if I can, if someone who is grandfathered, runs afoul and loses their license, do they then lose their grandfathered status and just come back in as a regular? And I like the idea that Madam Mayor shared about having, we're probably going to have a waiting list if we do have a set number of licenses, and I think that will help people in these situations maybe to enforce those requirements a little bit on those who are renting their properties, because there's a little bit more at stake than a slap on the hand and you come back next season automatically.
That I've seen that have been developed, the licensing ends with the person. It's not the same as kind of zoning restrictions. So, if an operator is a licensed operator and then sells the property, the new owners would not automatically get their license. They would have to purchase the property and apply for a license under their own name and power.
Through you, Madam Chair, that was the intent. The grandfathering would be the use of that property. Say there was, for example, say they were in the shoreline residential zone and council decides to prohibit the shoreline residential zone. That property could, if a new owner applied, be eligible, but it wouldn't preclude them. The person would have to apply.
Mm-hmm.
The license is with
the license would
use
travel with the sale of the house. The license would have to be applied for on the sale of a property by a new owner separately. Is there an insurance requirement to this?
Okay. So, any other questions?
For direction, I would go who's in favor of limiting the number of license, then we can talk about what that number would look like if that's something that council's in favor.
No, just, I think that to limit licenses to a total amount for West Nipissing is one thing, but perhaps looking at a geographic, which might be a little bit more complicated, but distribution. I guess, and this is not, I don't have a conflict, it isn't my lake, I don't own a lake, I just live near one. But I can tell you on Bagito Lake, there are only 8 cottages there. And so it really changes the dynamics of, and there was one there. And so if there were 2 or 3 there, it really makes it really not pleasant for the other 5 owners. So I don't know if council wants to look at that, but.
It gets so complex because there's so many things that you can do. And, you know, when this first came to planning committee before this term of council in 2021, you know, it was just kind of ramping up. Now we're at the point where a lot of municipalities have enacted some kind of bylaw, and they're all a little different to address things like that. So I've seen examples where you can't have 2 right next door to each other. So if you live at number 2 this street and somebody buys number 4 and you have a short-term license, if somebody buys number 4, they can't have a license because having 2 side by side then really is. So like there's an infinite number of ways that the bylaw can be written in order to, but as Mr. Barbeau said, you can't do it for every eventuality. You can't, so it's trying to find the balance where it's not a 1,600-page document.
We could simply say that you couldn't have more than one on the same road.
Well, it depends on the
Or
size of the
within-
lake. I mean, if Tomaco Lake is a pretty big lake,
Mm.
Sheboygan's a pretty big lake. Cache Lake has a lot of cottages, but, you know, it changes the dynamic, say, on Gatto Road, not to create, you know, or
Or within
whatever. Or
500
Deer Lake
meters
has a lot
or-
of space between the homes, so it's not as big deal. But I can tell you Badgerot Lake is one example where the lake is mostly crown land and there's 8 or 9 dwellings.
If you got
That's
2.
problematic. So unless there's some sort of consideration for that, if council doesn't wish to consider that, that's fine. But I'm just suggesting that it could still raise the specter of difficulty in enforcement and satisfaction for our residents who actually live on the lakes. Again, you're passing a bylaw in West Nipissing for our residents to control issues that are could negatively impact our residents.
Still not hearing.
No, I don't know.
So we were
Um,
on number licenses, but you know, like.
We can come back through you with a proposal if council is amenable to looking at limits and a geographic distribution of them, a little bit like our seniors supper. You know, we can potentially look at some formula that if council wishes to explore that, to ensure that no, and again, if they're grandfathered, the folks that are there will not be disadvantaged. It's just that going forward, this will be taken care of and, you know, the needs of our residents will be protected.
Okay. So who's in favor of having the administration review the amounts of possible strats on,
Geographic,
Oh,
how about the geographic
yeah.
distribution?
yeah. Then come back with,
I have a question.
Councilor Rivard has a question.
oh,
Through you, Madam Tessie. Yeah, I like the idea. I think it'll be difficult to do there with
Yeah.
our large geographical area and our different lakes and different road structures, size of lots, things like that. But something I wouldn't mind seeing in that as well would be if you own a property before this bylaw was put into effect, if you wanna, like, say say 3 people in your street have an Airbnb, but then your cottage ends up, your parents pass away and you end up inheriting the cottage, you can't afford the property tax anymore, but the house has always been in the family and you have an option of putting it up as an Airbnb. I don't think you should be penalized for that at that point either. Because then it sounds like if we were to put a limit on that road, then you just fall upon a property. But if someone goes to buy a property for that and for that purpose, I think that's when the limit on geographical area should come into play.
The issue is I'm not sure you're ever gonna know whether you're buying a property for that purpose, right? Because on Badger Road, the property was purchased by a southern Ontario family that came and then decided, so after the fact, they started doing it, so. I think that's hard to police.
And as through you, Madam Chair, and as Mr. Barwood indicated, there's always exceptions and, you know, people do come to us from time to time. There's always going to be the odd situation that we could deal with at the time at this table.
And as always, you know, when we get a year in or 2 years in and, you know, we discover what's going well and what's not. When I attended Roma last year, I attended a great symposium, and one of the speakers was the CAO from Prince Edward County. And they were a really interesting example because they originally developed their STA bylaw in 2018. So last year in 2023, yes, this year, which was January, they were actually on their second iteration. So they ran with the bylaw they originally developed for 2 or 3 years. And in that 2 or 3 years, they identified a lot of the errors they made and so some of the loopholes and went back and completely, like from scratch, completely redrafted it. But, you know, once a bylaw passed, it is not carved in stone. So, you know, a year later, or 2 years later, if there are issues that have been identified or things that we haven't addressed, I think the important thing is to try to get something on the books as a starting point. If this is where we're going, start to get that licensing process underway. And it doesn't mean we can't re-examine, you know, the various nitpicky pieces as far as what's worked and what's worked a year from now as well.
Yes. So I'm just confirming my direction is to go back and figure out a formula for ensuring that we don't have multiples.
Yeah, Steph and I will work with you.
Okay. And I had one further question through you, Madam Chair. I just wanted firm direction on the recommendation to extend it into the shoreline residential zone on a limited basis. And would that be the same limit as what we're putting on everything else?
I don't understand.
Through you, Madam Chair, the initial draft did not allow STRAs in the shoreline residential zone, period.
Which is where exactly?
Everybody who lives on lakefront properties.
So a Airbnb or a VRBO is not allowed on the lake?
No.
Well, then never mind what I just said.
That was the initial iteration,
Right.
but there was a lot of concern in the consultation because it was noted that that's where everybody wants to go.
Yeah.
So I was recommending that the STRAs be allowed in the shoreline residential zone, but on a limited basis.
And that's where that number of licenses came from.
Yeah, and I think that that's probably what we want to do, but I was under the assumption that most of our short-term rentals right now are lakefront.
They are.
Yeah. So if we're basically saying, no, we're gonna have some, but they're not gonna be lakefront, you're not gonna have a lot of short-term rentals unless you're renting your hunt cap. So I think we'll probably want to come back with that.
So we'll come back in the new year with with everything that's been discussed here tonight and some suggestions for ensuring that we don't have a big clump in one place.
Right.
So everybody, yeah.
I'm sorry, just one other question. So the one limit that you did want to put on in regards to provincially significant wetlands, floodplains, and capacity lakes, that would remain? That will come back with the geographic recommendations?
Through you, Madam Chair, that was something that I had included. The properties in those areas are limited to development, and any additional burden on them wouldn't be appropriate.
Okay, so I guess.
Councillor Resto.
I'm still not sure.
I'm trying my best to get us to 8 o'clock, so we don't start. Just kidding. Through you, Madam Chair, just, you know, my own thought on this is I appreciate that we're taking the time to be thorough with it because, you know, going back to Madam Mayor's comments as well, we're another, you know, community in the province had a bylaw in place, and that's nature, right? You're gonna put something together, and I've mentioned this in other meetings that we've had, where it's always good, I think it's good practice to review after a little while, because we might not get it 100% right the first time, but I think by taking this extra time to go back and see some of the things that councilors have identified as wanting additional information, I think is gonna put us in a better place when we actually, finalize this and put a bylaw in place for the community. So I appreciate comments from those around the table, and it's 7:55. I'm gonna try to stop babbling here. But just in seriousness, I appreciate that we are looking at a good thorough bylaw in this, and looking at geographical numbers and amounts of licenses and whatnot, so that we get something really strong out of the gate to work with.
Thank you. And now I'll pass back. Oh, Councillor Pellerin.
And last thought you, Madam Mayor was just saying, did see that on SR zone and provincially significant lands and floodplains, which is Lake Nipissing from Loving to Sturgeon, it's considered a floodplain. To me, that's not quite right, because if you conform with the septic bed and all this, this statement should not be part of this. Because you already own the home, you have the tile bed, and if it passes the proof of the tile bed, it doesn't really matter where it is.
What does floodplain look like?
Through you, Madam Chair, the floodplain is typically a designation given to properties that are below a certain elevation, which would be the elevation of whatever water body they're on. So they're prone to flooding.
Okay. And then there's lake set capacity listed there as well. What about lake set capacity?
To me, it would be the same, because if you're allowed to have the house with the 2-bedroom, which is 4 to 6 people, that you live there or you have an Airbnb, it's going to be the same. Because we're penalizing some people, I'm not sure why.
I'm still not cheering.
So is that to be added to our changes, or?
I would just say for lake set capacity, it is to me, it's a little different. So we have, environmental assessments on some of our lakes that have stated that, they can't take any more burden on their system. And they're a little bit more sensitive to changes in use. And even though it's a 2-bedroom, did we do 2 per bedroom or 2 per bedroom plus kids?
Through you, Madam Chair, I was recommending that the licensing be set at the time of application to the number of bedrooms and what the septic system is rated for.
Okay, so the question is up whether we want to restrict Airbnbs. I'm sorry, I'm chairing again,
Yeah,
Anna.
go ahead, science. I'm not familiar, it's okay.
Okay,
Go
so
Help me
it
out.
just like defining those decision points and make sure we deal with one at a time, and I really don't mean to take over.
No, it's okay, I don't know how to say it, so.
Okay, so, Councillor Pellerin put forward that there should not be exclusions to licensing based on lake capacity or zoning issues such as provincially significant wetland or floodplain. Okay, so I'd just like to see if that's a change that we'd like to see made in the, Madam Chair would like to see, that is a change we'd like to see in the bylaw, so a quick show of hands.
To remove that?
To remove it.
Okay. Yes.
Through you, Madam Chair. I think that'll fall into play with that geographical location kind of assessment of everything as well, right? So if
Yeah.
we have a geographical location that's something, a lake at capacity, maybe that, as what was
And
mentioned,
only
that would
has
have
two.
slightly less than
Yeah.
another area that has more, that don't have those restraints on it.
Mhm.
But I do understand what Councillor Pellerin is saying, is that if it's existing and it's kind of a quick switch of use, it's not too bad, but
Except
we'll
that the
leave that
zoning
up
bylaw
to.
says that there are no change of use permitted. So, provincially.
That's correct.
Okay.
permitted.
So, question,
So we'll address that through the geographic recommendations that staff brings back. Okay,
thank you.
if you do it quick, you can pass it back.
Okay, Madam Chair. Madam Mayor.
Okay, and I don't mean to keep our gallery waiting, but we are at 8:01 and our procedural bylaw does say that we break at 8 o'clock. So if I can have a mover and a seconder for a break, Councillor Gagne, Councillor Cushing.
It is moved by Councillor Gagne and seconded by Councillor Cushing at approximately 8:01 PM. A motion was tabled for a 10-minute recess.
Okay, all in favor? Thank you. Everybody, we're still in committee of the whole, and thank you to all council for the input during that long discussion. It is a big bylaw, and so, you know, it's not unexpected that it takes us a little while to get through all the nitty gritty on what that should look like. The next item of the agenda falls under our Social Services and Health Committee. And it is a follow-up to the petition received last week. For that, I will pass the floor to our chair, Councillor Restool.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll do my best here to chair. With the video, I don't always see hands. So if people want to speak up if they have questions or comments, that would be appreciated. Yeah, so the one agenda item that we have is, as was mentioned, was the petition that we received last meeting for the warming center in West Nipissing for our vulnerable population. A number of signatures on the document itself, and I guess at the end of the day, the ask was to look at developing or implementing a community warming center. And I know that there's more to the issue than just having a simple building that acts as a warming center. There's additional costs in terms of staffing and other things that need to be included within this. I've mentioned a couple times in previous comments, and it's where we're at right now, you know, fortunately or unfortunately, however you want to look at it. But, you know, our social services do come through DSAB, which is housed in North Bay. If there are changes that happen within here, within our community in West Nipissing specifically, you know, I'm just speaking, sharing a couple of ideas. I'm definitely going to open the floor to everybody to have their comments. But, you know, if it's approaching DSAB to look at expanding services into West Nipissing is cost. Sorry, I don't know if I'm getting feedback or if someone had a question. Or, you know, I guess another option is to increase revenue within the municipality aside from what we're legislated to send to DSAB for those social services and absorb a cost as a municipality to implement something like this. I know there's been discussions, and I'm gonna ask our CEO if he can provide some comments, because I know he's been working with different heads of organizations within the community. There has been some meetings that have taken place regarding possible supports to those individuals, some actions that have taken place over the last couple of weeks. And I'm, you know, I'm maybe sounding like I'm a little bit all over the place here. There's a lot of different things that could happen, and all of those things that could happen have, you know, ramifications in different areas, whether it be increased taxation rates to raise more funds, or, you know, working with our partners at DSAB to try and expand services within here it's budget time, I guess there's opportunity to always have those kind of discussions, but it's not as simple and, you know, I probably won't be the favorite person on Facebook, but it's not the easy solution to just simply open up a building and put heat on it and say, we've addressed the problem, because there's a lot of things that go along with that. A lot of supports that need to be in place, a lot of HR costs to have staffing for those kind of situations. And for those who had taken the opportunity to visit North Bay's low barrier shelter and their, you know, transitional housing at Northern Pines. I had been there. I think it's a very interesting setup there. And I think like I mentioned, almost every time we talk about this, the regime that we're under right now in terms of how we send those social service dollars to the central hub for the region, which is DSAB, is what we work under right now. And that's just how things are. We can look at different options, but I mean, we're talking about situations for the here and now, then we have to work within the structure that we have. And if we want to look at different things, we absolutely can. But for, you know, some of the individuals who comment that we're not doing anything, we have stuff in place, and that's just a fact as well. If we need to look at, you know, changing what things we have in place because of the emergence and the, you know, the magnification of the issue within the community, then that's something that's always at our disposal as well. But I don't want to take up too much more time, so I'll turn it over if you wouldn't mind sharing some comments to our CAO. And I also appreciate the camera operator for giving me the wide lens so I can see everybody.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure how much more I can say. You kind of touched on a lot of points. I'm assuming that that's a background. Other than that, then there might be no need for a warming center. We just have to go where you are right now by that sign because it's nice and green. You touched on a few points, and certainly, and so does the petition. The petition talks about our safety and well-being plan and having a variety of different, you know, solutions for a variety of vulnerable groups in the community, and certainly we take it seriously. You touched upon a visit, we'll call it a class trip or a school trip or a council trip that we all took yesterday for those who were able to, and had a very interesting and very informative description of a variety of levels that are provided to the vulnerable and homeless at this center. Very impressive. They also talked about a warming center that they had, or that they have in North Bay, and they also during that talked about the issues and the perils or the issues to consider when we are considering these types of initiatives as well. As you indicate, we can easily find space somewhere that you know, and make rearrangements. But the population in question have a variety of different needs that need to be met as well, and that we need to guard against. And so at this point, all I can indicate to you, and I think I mentioned publicly, not publicly, but in open yesterday at the meeting, is that I think that what we need to do is to have further meeting with our social service partners and discuss how we can find solutions that would satisfy our needs here in West Nipissing through council and through the social services board. So that's in the works, and we shall be looking at it. We are in the process of providing, and we apologize, but we've adjusted a lot of our work here in West Nipissing recently, as you know, with budgets and a few other things, and so we were unable to get a document to you today but certainly intend on, at the next meeting, providing an extreme cold weather plan. Extreme cold weather, however, is exactly that, extreme. And so we would be providing a solution where a certain threshold, I'm not sure whether it's -30 or -40, would kick in for all residents, where we would be providing options for them to warm themselves up. The cold weather, if it's below that threshold and is a permanent thing, then we certainly have to look at that. We have to look at the financing and the operation. So I guess what I'm suggesting is it's not off the table. It is going to be, but we do need to speak with our social service partners and mental health agency partners and the like to come up with an appropriate strategy. And I understand that a lot of individuals would like to take a straight line from A to B, and unfortunately, we don't have the same luxury to just think that way. We do have to consider the liability of all involved and ensure that we have a solution that satisfies those needs. So I don't have much more to say, Mr. Chair, other than you touched upon it, but I think that it's something that we have to look at. I will say, and I found, I didn't see the comments by the chair of the DSAB yesterday as defensive. He certainly reiterated comments he's made before, and we haven't had to do this before. This hasn't been an issue before. It has never come up, and I've been here a long time, and it just, and so now we're looking at trying to break new ground. And we are cognizant of the issues, of course, but we do have to work within the government framework that exists for West Nipissing. And so we are not a large municipality such as Toronto or Sudbury, where they are consolidated municipal service managers, where they're all part and parcel of the city. We have an area service board that we work with, and I wasn't satisfied, and it certainly isn't their fault, but I wasn't satisfied about a month ago, but I certainly am with respect to their willingness to assist us and work with us. And so all I can indicate to council is that we will be meeting and we will be discussing this and other matters to find solutions that are acceptable to this council going forward. So I don't know if that answers, Mr. Chair. I'd take any questions.
I appreciate those comments, Mr. Barbeau. I'm looking around. I'm not. Are there any questions?
Councillor Tessier.
Councillor Tessier.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. I understand that DSAB is responsible to work with communities. Visiting the Northern Pines was great. However, it still did not solve the issue about first come, first serve and being guaranteed to have a place. And it's only an overnight and having to go somewhere else in North Bay when they're living here. My thinking to assist best with suggestion is for them to have a stable place to be warm. It doesn't have to be a warming center. If it could be like a motel or a place or room, even though they have other issues that would be able to be addressed once they're comfortable and be able to, not worry about surviving the cold and where they are, that within West Nipissing, the West Nipissing Nonprofit Housing Corporation, I know last year when we started, they had apartments that were empty and they needed to remodel before getting them filled. If those would be available for the winter for these individual, through DSAM and through SELF, who do the outreach and the wellness check. They can check on them on their regular schedules. And also volunteers through SELF that are assisting can help them with making sure that through the wellness check that they get to their appointments, or that, there's order within
Oh, let's keep going, sorry.
within the where they are with the residents around, that they understand that they're there to have a place to stay for the winter, and they're working with them to, direct them to the service that are needed, because we do have services here in West Nipissing that provides for their needs. Ontario Works are here on Wednesdays. There's like housing services, like the nonprofit, or also other motels that can arrange, because there are some that are housed right now, which are doing really well with the services and the help from True South. We do have the West Nipissing Community Health Center, or other services that provide assistance for their needs. The Alliance Center, the West Nipissing West Family Health, and there's also a crisis center at the hospital. So the services are here. We just need to place them where they can be sheltered, and then get help through the community with different partners to be able to assist them in making sure that they don't forget their appointments, because
Right. I don't know if Mr. Resto can see my hand up.
I can see your hand and I can hear your voice. Go ahead.
There you go.
Mr.
Well, to respond through you, Mr. Chair, is thank you. Those are excellent points, and will be taken into consideration when we meet DSAB and our partners to look at that. So all I could tell you is when folks present things, they make it sound very simple, and I wish it were so. I've been dealing in this situation now for a month, and I'm being told it's much more complicated, but the logic of what you present is there, and I certainly will be bringing it forward to our partners to look at and to take those factors into consideration. I could also, though, tell you, though, and without arguing with you, the finding of space that is with either a landlord, both public sector or private sector, has been found to be problematic even in North Bay because of the groups. And so, and in fact, the warming center in North Bay, we were shared, has seen some problems. So we just want to be aware of all of the issues. We know what the end game is in terms of hopefully finding a solution. But we just want to make sure that we're doing this in the appropriate way as a government entity. And again, I think that in the next week or so, I will be reaching out to them tomorrow, but hopefully in the next week or so, we'll have a more fruitful discussion. And I indicated that at our meeting yesterday, or our tour yesterday, that we need to have a little bit more discussions to formalize what DSAB's role is in this manner, and other agencies' roles are in that manner, and how we continue to work in a coordinated fashion. So, but your point, Councillor Tessier, will certainly be brought up, and the interest in what you've stated, and the petition certainly will be brought to the attention of our social service and other partners, and we'll look at coming back and reporting on whatever outcomes we came to as a team.
Thank you for those comments, Mr. Barbeau. Madam Mayor?
Right, I'll speak briefly just in general to the petition, but also to the activities. I know that staff has been working very hard on their end on the administrative level. But I, along with Councillor Tessier, Councillor Nicol, and Councillor Pellerin, did attend this tour yesterday, and we were hosted by two managers from the Crisis Center, who is the funded operator of the Northern Pines complex. And, you know, the Crisis Center has been doing work in this field since 1972 in North Bay, and have a lot of experience working with populations that can sometimes be very difficult to serve. And, you know, one of the things I think that was made clear throughout the presentation is the focus on, you know, the professional services and the wraparound services that are required that to bring somebody from a position of being unsheltered to being stably housed. If you haven't read about the project that they've undertaken there, it really is quite impressive because it is a staged recovery. It is a staged program with goal setting with the clients and helping them really travel the road between, you know, the realities of living in the cold in Northern Ontario and getting to the point where they can manage independently to be stably housed. Now, that's not what we're talking about here, you know, with the warming center even, you know, absolutely, I think there's a need to provide some kind of plan to address those extreme colds, which is really what's talked about in the petition here as a first step. You know, this petition isn't necessarily dealing with, you know, developing a fully integrated, coordinated shelter system like they have in North Bay, but be clear what DSAB has set up, and the model always has been for regional service delivery. They have to serve clients and people that come from Mattawa, come from South Algonquin, that come from New Liskeard, come from West Nipissing. And the types of programs and the way all types of agencies are working together to address very individualized needs is really quite impressive. And I don't at all want to underestimate that the work that DSAB has put in here, because I think it's a model that is one of the better ones that I've seen implemented across the province as far as attaining long-term goals or long-term outcomes. You know, on my end, you know, I've said before, I never thought I'd have to do quite so much reading on a topic such as this, because, you know, what we've said before, municipalities are not the service deliverer for social services. Like, it's not, we don't hire, you know, social workers. It's provided by another level of government. So it's not something that on a council level we've ever really had to consider how to address. But Councillor Tessier is absolutely right. We have a group of really great community partners here. And I've spoken with them all individually, some more formal, some informally, but including the hospital, including the community health center, including the Alliance Center. And everybody wants to see us increase our capacity to help those in need. But it is a longer process than people want to admit. Like, you know, it's not that we're not doing the work, and it's not that we're not having those conversations or trying to educate ourselves on what needs to be done. It's just, it's a big topic. And there's a lot of moving pieces. North Bay has developed their coordinated access system. And it's something that isn't really implemented out here. And, you know, Councillor Restool and I, in his role as chair of DSAB, have had, you know, a conversation on how we bring that up to the board at DSAB. So how can we make sure that our organizations, the hospital and the Alliance Center, are able to track and help the people that they're interacting with, because we know the hospital and the Alliance Center are having interactions with people who have more, you know, severe needs, and maybe they can't do anything, but the system in North Bay of a shared database is really an interesting kind of concept. But those are long-term things. I know that staff will come back with an extreme cold plan, as we said right from the start. The space or the place isn't necessarily the issue. For us, it's finding the right partners in the community that can actually offer the level of service and safety, because I think that that's an important thing. You know, we heard from the crisis center on, you know, the issues that their staff face in maintaining control and keeping a safe environment for everybody. It's a lot more challenging than it looks, and that's the piece that we don't have. That's the piece where we need community partners to step up. I had a 2-hour meeting with a partner in the community that offers similar type services today, and talking about different solutions and different ways that might be structured and what that might look like. But we are working on it, and I look forward to seeing the plan brought to council next week to address those immediate needs. But we are aware of the issues within the community at large, and both at a political and administrative level, and you know, as well as Councillor Restool, his seat on the board, we continue to work on those discussions, and I think right now we've made a very we have good traction within DSAB, and they really are listening and understanding that we have issues here that need to be addressed. Thank you, Chair. Sorry for rambling.
Oh, it's okay. It's all good comments for sure. Any other comments from our council colleagues? Not seeing any. You know, I'll limit my comments to what I opened with, and I just want to say my appreciation for our staff. Like was mentioned by our CEO, it is a new emerging issue in the community. It's never been at this level before, and trying to catch up and get ahead of this and get some good answers and good processes in place with our community partners is important. And I appreciate the work that's been done, because as the mayor just mentioned, this isn't something traditionally that sits at the council level. We do, you know, pay our levy to DSAB to, you know, put in the work to make sure that our community and community members within have the resources that they need to stay warm and stay safe and get back to a good place in each of their lives through different services that are offered. So it's a challenge. I've said this a couple of times. If it was an easy answer, we'd already have the solution. But unfortunately, there are big challenges. The time of the year doesn't help with the temperature as well. But looking forward to the next update that comes, and working with our community partners to find some solutions to help those that need those social services. So I'll end my comments there. I appreciate everyone's sharing this evening on this issue, and I will turn it back to Madam Mayor.
Sorry, there's one more comment from Councillor Tessier.
Oh, sorry.
Through you, Mr. Chair, would it be possible to get updates at each meeting on the progress that's being done about the situation, to get some actual information?
Well, and I'd be happy to provide updates to council when I have them. In this case, given the fact that keyword is cold, it's probably going to be something that I need to work on sooner than later. So hopefully I have some update for you next meeting, given the issue. In general, I would respond to a comment like that as you know, to the degree that I'm able to provide an update, that I have anything meaningful to tell council, I always do.
Thank you.
I appreciate that, Mr. CEO. I just had one other comment that's not related to the issue, but I did receive a quick note that we may not be online. I don't know if that can be checked, just for our constituents watching at home. And I'll end my part of the agenda, turn it back over to you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Restool. We are through committee of the whole, and we will move on to the items of our regular meeting. Shall I wait or just continue? Everything's okay?
The meeting was on.
Okay, so thank you very much, everybody. Next on the agenda is item 6.1, the consent agenda.
It is moved by Councillor Tessier and seconded by Councillor Crochet. Be it resolved that the consent agenda for the Council Committee of the Whole meeting held on December the 5th, 2023 be approved as presented.
Questions or comments? All in favor? Carried. Next, we have a couple items under planning this evening. Madam Clerk?
It is moved by Councillor Crochet and seconded by Councillor Tessier. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2023-98 being a deeming bylaw to designate lot 21 on registered plan 36M598 not to be a lot within a registered plan of subdivision shall come into force and take effect when the date is passed.
Would you, is this the first time we've dealt with a deeming bylaw? And if so, could you give us just a brief overview of the,
That is correct. And through you, Madam Chair, normally these would come to planning advisory, but since there is no meeting this month and there's a building permit sitting waiting to be issued, I took the liberty of bringing it directly to council. So when you have a lot and a plan of subdivision, it can be conveyed separately at any given time. In this case, the individual wishes to build a shed on the lot that he owns abutting. And in order to consolidate the accessory structure with the principal structure, we need to deem the lot not to be a lot on the plan of subdivision so he can merge them together.
so it's really just paperwork.
It's paperwork.
Any questions or comments on the, on this motion? Okay, all in favor? Carried. Okay, next up, please.
It is moved by Councillor Tessier and seconded by Councillor Cochet. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2023-99 being a bylaw to grant approval of a draft plan of subdivision on lands described as part of Lot 5, Concession 5 in the Township of Loudon shall come into force and take effect on the day it is passed.
Okay, a brief overview.
Through you, Madam Chair, as indicated in my staff report, this was a subdivision that had come to council many, many years ago. And it had, the owner had subsequently withdrawn the application. He did move forward with a couple of severances in the same area, but has exceeded the number allowed, but would like to continue to sell the lots on this land. They indicated they're water access lots. They are accessible only by boat. They're all in excess of the minimum required frontage and lot area for the zone. As a condition of the approval, he will be required to rezone those lands to shoreline residential as they're currently part of a much larger parcel and are zoned rural.
Questions or comments on the application? Okay, all those in favor? Carried. Okay, no correspondence, no unfinished business. Under new business, we received the roads needs study at our last meeting. Madam Clerk.
It is moved by Councillor Gagne and seconded by Councillor Pellerin. Be it resolved that council adopts the West Nipissing Roads Needs Study as presented to council on November the 21st, 2023.
Councillor Clark.
Just for my own personal, I never caught the cost of that study. It's still.
Lisa, I think it was 49.
I think it was 49. Yeah, I apologize. I did ask that, but I think it was 49. Yeah,
And that was part of the modernization fund?
it was, yes.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, all in favor? Carried.
It is moved by Councillor Pellerin and seconded by Councillor Gagne. Whereas Crime Stoppers, an internationally recognized program, is a partnership of the public, media, and law agencies providing citizens with a proactive program to anonymously assist police partners in solving crimes, contributing to an improved quality of life in communities. And whereas to date, Near North Crime Stoppers has received 22,468 calls and submissions from tipsters, contributing to the arrest of 1,786 individuals and over 4.3 million in property and cash having been recovered, and nearly 58 million in drugs destined for our communities having been seized because of the Crime Stoppers' anonymous valuable information. Be it therefore resolved that Council of the Corporation of the West Nipissing Municipality hereby authorizes the declaration of the month of January 2024 as Crime Stoppers Month in West Nipissing.
Okay, all questions or comments? All in favor? Carried. Okay, and the last item on the agenda is we have a request for funding from the West Nipissing Food Bank, which is an annual occurrence. I'll have a.
It is
sorry,
moved
Madam
by
Clerk.
Councillor Gagne and seconded by Councillor Pellerin. Whereas at the December 5th meeting, Council received a request from the West Nipissing Food Bank requesting that financial assistance received from the municipality of West Nipissing to be applied towards their rental expenses be continued for 2024. And whereas the West Nipissing Food Bank has informed the municipality that their monthly rent has increased from $679.15 a month to $631.07 per month plus HST, be it resolved that council authorizes a financial contribution of $8,557.32, being $713.11 per month, be sustained for the West Nipissing Food Bank towards their 2024 expenses.
Okay, I just have one question. Is this expense included in our budget for 2024? So is this extra money or is this accounted for somewhere?
So they do request it every year. It is budgeted as if it is continuing. So it is a slight increase over what was in 2023, but not that would make a budget impact.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor? Carried, thank you. And I think that's it for our regular agenda tonight. As the mayor's report, the only thing I will say is next Wednesday, December 13th, is the great return of our senior summer. I know both our staff team and our council are really looking forward to the event and seeing this come back. It'll be the first one for all of us as councillors, and I think we're all pretty excited to see it all in action. So I look forward to seeing all of the lucky seniors who managed to get tickets next Wednesday. And other than that, we will see you in 2 weeks' time for our next meeting.
It is moved by Councillor Pellerin and seconded by Councillor Gagne. Be it resolved that we proceed into closed meeting as authorized in Section 239 of the Municipal Act to discuss the following: the security of the property of the municipality or local board, and advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications for that purpose regarding from the Act.
Okay. All those in favor? Carried.
That the closed meeting of council held on December the 5th, 2023 be adjourned in order to return to open session.
All those in favor? Carried.
When adjourning, it is moved by Councillor Nicol and seconded by Councillor Gagne. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2023-100, being a bylaw of the West Nipissing Municipality to confirm the proceedings of council at its meeting held on December 5th, 2023, shall come into force and take effect on the day it's passed.
All those in favor? Carried.
It was moved by Councillor Nicol and seconded by Councillor Rivard. Be it resolved that the meeting of council held on December 5th, 2023 be adjourned.
All those in favor? Carried. Thank you very much, guys. Good meeting.